Welcome back to the Thermo Diet Podcast. I'm your host, Jayton Miller, and today I have a group podcast for you. So I have Meg Langston on the podcast today, along with Loren Delacruz and Theresa Piela. I'm super excited for y'all to be able to listen to this episode. We talk about the importance of putting yourself first in your health journey, the importance of keeping your journey simple and making sure that you simplify things in order to get the highest leverage factors into place. And then we also talk about the importance of setting boundaries and learning how to prioritize whenever you are looking to get the most out of your time or the biggest bang for your buck, so to speak, whenever it comes to time utilization. So I'm really excited for y'all to be able to listen to this one. So let's dive into it. Welcome back to the Thermo Diet Podcast. I'm your host, Jayton Miller, and today I have a few ladies on the podcast with me. I have Meg Langston, Loren Delacruz, and Theresa Piela. How y'all doing today?
So good.
So great. Thanks for having us.
Definitely. So if we can kind of go round robin as far as introductions and kind of what y'all do and where y'all came from. We can start with Meg, then Loren, and then Theresa. And I'm only doing that because that's the way it's kind of lined up on my screen right here.
Yeah. So I'm Meg, and I am a nutritional therapy practitioner and a restorative wellness practitioner. And I work in my practice remotely with women, usually like 24 to 35, and they're coming to me because they have issues with digestive issues or, hormonal imbalances, thyroid, so slow metabolic, and really usually have a similar story to me and how they are, trying to pursue their health, which is I grew up a competitive athlete, and I got into a lot of like different bodybuilding and different sports from there, and really fell into diet culture and body image and body dysmorphia and all the restrictive dieting, habits that really take place in that. I had an eating disorder. I had disordered eating habits, which I think are really two different things. And I pursued health by starting to really, from my heart, it's always going back to identity and just kind of who am I beyond just nutrition, and from there really learning and geeking out of like, well, this is how food really nourishes my body, and this is the things that I can do to improve my health. And I started to feel good, and I got really into learning about your period and how our menstrual cycle as women is a fifth vital sign, and one of the most I think a tool that makes us potentially more superior than men. I'm not saying anything, Jayton. I'm just saying it potentially could be. But yeah, so I work with a lot of women that have like the same heart or same story and really heartbreak of wanting to get healthy and are struggling with identity, are wanting to know about their period, and all in those ways, like from a holistic point of view, really starting to tackle health issues. And other than that, I am a wife and a mom, and a mom of two puppies as well. So that's it for me.
Awesome.
Yeah. Okay. Me next, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. My name is Loren Delacruz. I'm also a nutritional therapy practitioner. So Meg and I went to the same school, different year probably. I'm also a root cause protocol consultant. So I went to the Root Cause Protocol Institute with Morley Robbins, and I'm currently in functional diagnostic nutrition, trying to close out that course to bring even more functional lab testing to my practice. So yeah, I work with a lot of women preparing for conception. And that's kind of, it's the phase that I'm in. It's the phase that I have a soft spot for helping women and have helped them in the past. I primarily work with women, preconception prep is not just about getting pregnant too. Oftentimes the women that come to work with me are struggling with severe hormonal imbalances, endometriosis. They've also had struggles with metabolism. Maybe they're dealing with some iron overload issues. Generally speaking, a lot of people are. So I work with them to really get things back into balance before they try to conceive, so that they can put their best foot forward when conceiving, and their baby's health will also benefit. So yeah, I that's my story. I'm currently actually working on a course too for preconception, and that's just taking up most of my life. I know Meg's done a course in the past, so I'm sure she can attest to how much work it is. But boy, it's definitely a lot of work, but I'm really excited to send it out and share it with the world.
I can't wait to see that. That's going to be really good.
Awesome. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, likewise. I'm Theresa Piela. I like the way you pronounce my name, though. That was fun. But I kind of ended up here by accident with my own health saga, which I won't get too much into, but basically found myself falling down this wormhole of crazy diagnoses and seeing practitioners and naturopaths and functional doctors, and was getting worse and worse and worse, and not only losing complete gut motility due to infection, but losing a sense of myself in the process, which I'm sure you can all relate. When you don't feel well, when your physiology does not function the way we need it to, you start to see the world through a pretty toxic and filtered lens. So long story short, colon hydrotherapy was one of the things that kept me alive when I was kind of in critical condition. And that's what I ended up training in, thinking that I was going to open my own practice for mostly the chronically ill, or even just, the elderly that need some colon support. And then with the lockdowns and all of the changes in the world, kind of pivoted again and started focusing more on the brain rewiring aspect of health, because I'd say if I had to break down what was helpful for me, yes, nutrition and kind of finding my way through the world of first highly restrictive healing diets to more of a carnivore approach just to stabilize, not a long-term diet, of course, then into Ray Peat and Morley Robbins and kind of figuring out what worked for my body. Then figuring out too that the brain aspect is so important, especially in the realm of chronic illness, just honoring what happens to a brain when it loses the ability to think positively and think of a future, when, just survival is such a hard thing to manage. So right now I'm focusing mostly on working with clients in group settings and one-to-one, mostly chronically ill people that, again, need that just sense of safety first in their thoughts. Of course, we know that the pro-metabolic eating and filling in the gaps and figuring out what the deficiencies and overloads might be, but really trying to calm that psychological stress to at least, I think, calm the maybe biggest stressor that might be impacting them, which is what their brain is telling their body. So yeah, hopefully that covered that's me. At least what I do for work. So yeah.
Awesome. So what do y'all think is probably the epiphany moment that y'all had? What was the first moment whenever y'all actually realized, like, hey, I'm doing something right, I'm actually starting to see results here? What was kind of that moment for you guys in y'all's experience?
I definitely have one of those moments. If you guys don't mind. I didn't mention this, but what sort of started my journey into nutrition and sort of alternative health was coming off the birth control pill. And on the birth control pill, I was a wreck. And coming off the birth control pill, I was also a wreck. So when I went to my doctors, I saw all of them, my primary care doctor, my OBGYN, and my dermatologist. And I was talking to them about like my hair, my skin, my gut. Prior to that, I had dealt with autoimmune issues on the birth control pill, severe mineral deficiencies that no one really spotted, actually. So all they could really offer me when I was, experiencing post-birth control syndrome, which, it can be very vague. I'm describing it very vaguely, but my experience with post-birth control syndrome involved very slow thyroid function, burnt out adrenals, incredible nutrient deficiencies, hair loss like no other, cystic acne, all the things that I kind of like took the birth control pill for, and started to experience on the birth control pill as well. And all they could offer me was getting back on a pill or taking the pill again. So it was either spironolactone or let's get you back on the pill. That'll make it go away. And I was absolutely not. I'm not going to mess with my hormones anymore. And that was all they could offer me. So I was like, okay, I have to really take things into my own hands. And so I started researching a lot. I didn't really know what it was that I was experiencing until I, ran into Dr. Jolene Brighton's work. At that point, though, I had, done a lot of work that was actually working for me. But I changed my diet, I changed my lifestyle. I had to say no a lot more. I was living in New York City at the time too, so it was, there was a lot happening around me, and it was very difficult to have that discipline. But in the long term, it really helped me. And my initial sort of, spark was or my epiphany was, my acne was still not that great, my hair loss was still not that great, but my lifelong asthma had started to disappear. And I was just like, oh my gosh, I don't have to use my inhaler anymore. This is amazing. And so I just kept, pushing through, and eventually healed myself, and got rid of my asthma along the way, which is really awesome. So that's kind of my epiphany moment there.
Loren, mine's, so go ahead.
Whenever you said that you had to say no to certain things, do you have any examples of the kind of stuff that you had to stay disciplined towards saying no to?
Yeah, I had to create personal boundaries, and a lot of it was, I was living in a city where everyone there, the whole point of everyone being there is to go out and to party. And granted, I had a very different job, and I just had to create boundaries for myself, socially mostly, because it was, let's grab drinks after work, or let's go to this club, or and as I started to become more of a homebody, and I would still go and hang out with friends, I would just, kind of cut out the things that I didn't want to partake in. But that's kind of the boundaries that I had to create for myself. So it was really putting myself first, not being worried that I was going to insult anyone by turning down their desire to hang out with me, and really just creating a lot of boundaries and focusing on myself and caring for myself. That's kind of the main thing in my situation.
That's awesome. All right. I'm sorry.
Yeah. No, you're great. I was just going to say, Loren, it's so crazy because I feel like, my similar is not birth control. It's, it was post-birth control, but it was really getting familiar with fertility awareness method. And I know a lot of us work with women. I feel like that is one of the biggest driving factors is it just always goes back to like birth control or your menstrual cycle that I have found that are really, people are becoming like, oh, that's not normal. And it's so crazy. And my story, again, it's not like, that I noticed it really like post-birth control, although it was post-birth control. And I was on birth control for, oh gosh, I want to say 10 to 11 years around that time frame. And I was newly married and doing fertility awareness method, which if you're not familiar with that, it's basically learning how to, it's using the basal body temperature, something, cervical mucus or discharge, and becoming familiar with your cycle so that you can either avoid pregnancy or, get pregnant. And for me, it was really also just about body literacy. And so I remember I didn't have my period, and I just kept thinking about how crazy that was, that I just could not get my period. And finally, when I did, I had worked so hard to try to eat enough, because remember my past was so much of like under eating and eating disorder. So I'd worked so hard to eat enough. And then finally my temperatures were low. Everything I was reading in all these books of taking charge of your fertility and all these books kept saying your temperature needs to be like, 97.6 or whatever in your follicular phase. And mine kept being like 95.9 or 95.7. Like it was so incredibly low. And so once I started to get familiar with like, the signs of what my body could be doing. A really good book for this is Period Manual Repair. And I started to learn like, oh, okay, so that my temperatures could mean low thyroid, and I don't really have cervical mucus, so that could be, a sign of health and not enough estrogen or not enough, even progesterone. And I'm not getting my period, so that doesn't really mean I'm ovulating. And just learning all these things of my body. And then I took that information, similar to you, Loren. I went to a conventional doctor. The doctor was like, well, you're an athlete, so like, that happens with athletes. It's not that big of a deal. They didn't really, I really had to push for a thyroid test, and I didn't know what a full thyroid panel was, but I knew that I needed to get that done because of what the books were saying. And they were so, just hesitant to do that. And I felt really discouraged and really insecure, because I was like, well, I'm not somebody that just makes up my symptoms. I'm not somebody that is, a sensitive, overly sensitive, or thinks I have all these things wrong. Like, this is what's happening. And I felt so insecure. But luckily at the time I had somebody speak into my life and say, like, that's not normal. Your doctor's incorrect, and you have more power. They said the words to me, you hire your doctors and you can fire your doctors. And then I went, and I was like, you're right. Like, I do hire them. I choose to go to them. And so it really empowered me. I went to a functional medicine doctor. And from there is, where I really started to get into nutrition, because although functional medicine doctors are great, sometimes they do work a little bit like conventional doctors, where it's like test, supplement. And I was like, I think I'm missing the nutrition side of it. And so, that's really my story.
So I think we all have overlapping similarities of just starting to find our own answers when what we thought would help us ended up not helping us. And same for me in terms of, I think I had like a long chunk of time where just continual breakdowns were sort of what felt like throwing me out of the nest in a way. But to start off was when I was still in middle school, and I was diagnosed with chronic fatigue and acid reflux. And again, I was put on Prozac at the time and Prilosec. And my doctor said, oh, this is normal. We have no cure for chronic fatigue, but you'll be fine. So that was like my first little glimpse of, okay, I don't feel fine. I knew it did not feel normal. And I had felt pretty sick since I was probably in second grade, when I started noticing that something was not right. I just felt kind of yucky, like the classic, I guess the Eeyore mood is what comes to mind. Like, just the world felt gray, and I thought it was normal, but I had this small awareness that something was not right. And over the years of trying to feel better and seeing doctors and trying to find answers, it was just a snowball effect of test, diagnosis, okay, treatment plan. And it kind of exploded with the whole Lyme and co-infection world. And I'm sure some of you are aware that kind of opens up this portal of, ooh, you have Lyme, you also have toxic mold, you also have crazy heavy metals. And I mean, again, it's just the body. One thing goes wrong and then the body tries to correct. And in the meantime, all these critters come in. But I think it was really, my breaking point was after getting hyperthermia. It's where they cook your body at 107 degrees for 4 hours straight. You're getting IV antibiotics, hoping to, oh, Meg, your face right now. Anyways, hoping to blast the Lyme out of the body. Yeah, it's a kind of intense, it's a pretty intense treatment, but I was at the point just months before where I was like, my body's barely functioning. I can barely lift myself out of bed. I wasn't able to even process the elemental formula without having extreme reactions. And I was like, if I can't live off of a man-made pre-digested formula, what is left for me? So it was kind of out of desperation, fear, and just throwing my hands up. But after the hyperthermia, my body was knocked down even more. So it was this cracking point of being like, okay, everything that this world is offering me in terms of functional medicine, alternative medicine, energy medicine, nothing is shifting the needle. In fact, it's depleting me even more. And I was about 79 pounds at this point, just kind of like an ET-like creature. And that, I think, was maybe the biggest gift, because I started to realize, okay, if there's nothing I can grasp onto in this physical world, what is left? And I started paying attention to my thoughts and how I could kind of manipulate my reality and find like these micro moments of peace and see if I could extend them for a little bit longer. And in those moments, that's where I'd get these ideas of, oh, okay, maybe I can try this, even though I was kind of in a hopeless state of, oh my gosh, I've already tried everything. But that's what led me to Danny Roddy's work, actually. And then I started reading everything I could possibly find from Ray Peat and Georgi Dinkov. And I've always loved biology and understanding what's happening at a very small level. So I think that combined with some of the brain work just had these little sparks of inspiration. And I started feeling better just with some of these tools. Funnily enough, I think it was coffee and carrots that gave my body at least a teeny bit of a leg up to feel like I could think again, because when the gut is so destroyed, the brain fog kind of blocks any ability to think critically and think creatively. So even reading some of these protocols, I couldn't really absorb them in the way that now I look back and I'm like, oh, okay, that makes sense. So yeah, I think it was kind of a succession. And then finally, I guess stepping back from the desire to fix things or heal, when I just started to feel this sense of peacefulness, like, okay, this is what life gave me. If I can't be happy with a functioning, healthy body, what can I choose to celebrate now? And yeah, that's why I'd say I'm a really big believer in the brain rewiring aspect of things, because I think it can really shift the needle when diet can only take you so far. Because we all know that, if you're living a life you hate, diet's only going to be this small shifter. So, yeah.
Have you ever read Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning?
So, I collect a bunch of Viktor Frankl's quotes because I think they're just like so profound and juicy. Like he can sum up everything I believe in one phrase, but I haven't actually read any of his complete works. Should I?
Man's Search for Meaning is definitely the one that I recommend. It basically takes you through his experience throughout the Holocaust. So he was a Jew as a prisoner in the camps, and he is also a psychotherapist. So it's basically him observing his state of mind while he was forced into his most primordial state, so to speak. It's very fascinating.
And I'm so glad you say that, because I think, and I'm sure all of you can relate, like when people's bodies start breaking down, it kind of opens up other portals where they can start to really question what like how they're living, how they're thinking, how they're spending their time. So in a way, it is a gift. So I'm glad we can kind of trace this through philosophy and art and poetry and psychotherapy. And it kind of gives our work so much more meaning, because it's not even, nutrition opens up that little doorway to say, okay, the main thing here is, are you living a life that feels good to you? It's going to go by pretty quickly. You might as well take control in the ways that we can. So I'm excited to read that.
Me too.
Definitely. So what are some of the things that y'all are doing today that has the biggest impact for y'all right now?
For me, it is it's just right off the topic that we're talking about. Well, in terms of nutrition can only take you so far. I am pretty open about the fact that I had back-to-back miscarriages, and my nutrition is on point. But what's not on point is I'm running my own business. I'm in school. I have a 2-year-old, and I don't really have good boundaries with just outside things in my life. Loren talked about saying no a lot. That's a really healthy thing to do while you're trying to pursue health. And although I think I did good for a while there, sometimes running your own business and doing certain things, you maybe are not good in some areas, or at least I'm not in. I found that I wasn't. So for right now, my current state is like really, really implementing things that are so fun for me and being really careful with social media. My business is growing on social media, and it allows me to continue to grow and develop in other ways. And, this is my business. My career is how I pay for my home and help feed my family and all these things. It's super important. But I in the business being part of my passion, really just kind of took over, where I stopped doing the other things that are important, like the boundaries that I talked about and the fun that I talked about. So, with that, like the practical things that I'm doing is I bought an alarm clock. My phone is no longer in my bedroom at night. It is, my alarm clock is on. My phone is in another bedroom on loud in case, the world falls apart. And so, and then the other thing, like I said, is scheduling and fun. And when you're in a really burnt out state, which I've never really noticed, I've never really been in before. I've never had some of the life situations happen to me that have in the last year, good and bad. But when you're in a burnt out state, what I found was like, I can't have like the quiet time and the diffusers going and all the things that I used to, because I have a 2-year-old that wakes up at 5 a.m. and, it's just not as quiet and relaxing. So I had to figure out what is fun and what is relaxing, and how do I be disciplined enough to continue to make sure that I'm weekly getting it in. And it changes. Like sometimes I feel like, oh, I've got it down. Like as long as I go for a walk, or as long as I, just put on music and dance, that's the only thing. But, each week changes. Sometimes I need less energy. Sometimes I need more energy. And so practically for me, it is literally scheduling in fun and talking through with my husband, hey, these are the days that I need, and this is the hours that I need. And it sounds weird, but when you're in a place of go, 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 and my personality is like, I'll run the full marathon before I do anything else, which is very true for my life. Like I don't stop and always smell the roses. And so, yeah, that's practically what I'm doing now is learning, like in this state of life of the business going and growing, and the demand of everything else, being very practical and very just protective of my time and fun.
Definitely. Yeah, I think for me personally, I am still experimenting with regulating my blood sugar throughout the day. I would say that's the biggest high leverage factor that I've been able to figure out. My fingers and my toes freeze up very, very easily. So things that I can do to help sustain blood sugar and keep it at a certain level throughout the day is what I've been experimenting with the most. And it's been good, especially I actually learned this from Josh Rubin whenever I was just looking through his Instagram one day, and he talked about the protein to carb ratio. And ever since I found out that one little tip from his Instagram post, like it has helped tremendously from being satiated from the meals that I'm eating, but also, keeping my fingers and toes warm. My brain clarity is a lot better. My mood's a lot better. So it's kind of interesting just implementing that one little change and seeing the difference that it can make in myself anyways.
That's awesome. Regulating blood sugar is just like one of the best things you can do for yourself. I feel like once you get that down, you just have so much more energy and clarity to do the things that you want to do. And once you get, understand your sort of macro ratio too, it can really set you up so that you're prepared and you don't feel like, you can go do this thing and not have to worry. You can go on the hike and not have to worry. And it just gives you a lot more energy to do everything. It's really one of the lowest hanging pieces of fruit that I feel like anyone can implement. I'll go ahead and share sort of where I'm at. It's very similar to Meg, almost identical. Yeah, so I guess creating boundaries is really one of the biggest things that I could ever recommend for anyone, especially on their healing journey, but also just normally and generally speaking. I am someone that chomps off a little more than they can chew. I always take on too much. I think it's because I probably, try to be high functioning, that kind of thing, and just get really excited. And just have a lot of aspirations and ambitions for myself. But I also need to be realistic with myself. And so that's the hardest part. Like I'll say, oh, I'm going to do all of these things in one day. And then I get through my list and I've done 2 of them. So it's really the desire to do more, but really creating boundaries and being more realistic and getting to know that about myself, especially as I build this course and my business grows. and I'm also, in the preconception phase. So I don't want to be depleted when I go and try to conceive. I really want to be in a good state. So I've had to slow down, and I've had to ask for a lot of help, and I've had to say no to a lot of things and just push back my timelines to help serve me better. Um, and so I think asking for help too, not only creating boundaries, but knowing when to ask for help is also a really helpful thing. For example, you know, we just moved as well recently, a couple months ago, and there's so much to be done around the house. I'm sure you all know what it's like to move. And I just, between the course and clients and everything, it's just really hard for me to go food shopping. So I'll ask my husband to go food shopping. Well, get that task done for me is like saving me a whole hour in a day. And maybe we go twice a week. So that's 2 hours, and it really allows me to keep the stress low during those days that I have to be really hyper productive. Um, but also to what Meg said too, is just like scheduling fun. I have a must with during the day. I always take my dog for at least 30-minute walk to an hour walk. I always try to go for an hour. If I can't, it's at least 30 minutes. And I just always make that part of my day. And it just allows me to feel like I did something for myself. It allows me to clear my mind and be more productive when I get back. And so just scheduling, that little break in between, it's important to take breaks, I would also say. So creating
Loren,
those boundaries.
I want to know how you feel about pushing dates back. Does that kill you? Is it really hard? That's the hardest thing for me.
Yeah, it is hard, but it also allows me to keep sanity, because once I like hate to push dates back, but once I do, the weight that comes off my shoulders is
Yeah,
immense.
that's
And so
good.
I'm just like, I just feel that's a good idea. I'm glad I did that.
That's good.
And so I think we put a lot of stress on or pressure on ourselves. Um, you know, Especially as practitioners, we always want to keep growing, bringing value to our clients. Um, and, just in general, social media is also a very high pressure place. And it's also a very toxic place too. I should also say, like, I've made some boundaries for myself too on social media. As my business has grown, I've found myself spending more time on there when I really don't have the time. And there's also a lot of, as your business grows too, and as your following grows, there's also all kinds of personalities that come out of the woodworks. And you know it's just inevitable with social media. And it's just something that you have to figure out how you're going to approach when you get it's honestly, I don't know how else to describe it, but you get trolls on your page. And it's, even though some people can brush it off really easily, I'm somebody that takes them very personally. And it's very taxing for me to have to deal with that, as here and there. So creating boundaries and just figuring out the best approach so that you can move forward and not have to stress yourself out too much or have them take too much energy from you is also natural part of our business too. But definitely something to figure out if you're yourself or a practitioner, or if you're on social media. And your listeners, whoever are listening to this podcast, if you feel like you come across information that's triggering, maybe just step back and think about why that's triggering for you instead of reacting right away. Um,
Why
it
is
can,
eating animal protein triggering for you? Can you take a second and figure
yeah.
that out?
And so it's all about creating a more productive and constructive space, because even though social media can be very toxic sometimes, it can also be very healing and a great place to create new connections and community. And so I like to keep it more on that side of the fence. um, so just be aware of how you interact with people socially online, especially now that most of us are at home and spending so much time on it anyway. But also be aware of the actual amount of time you're spending on there too, because it can be very easy to get sucked in, and it can be draining without realizing it.
I like that both of you, well, actually, all of you brought up the idea of how simple it can be sometimes, which I think, again, is one of the reasons why Instagram can be a little toxic sometimes, because it adds to that overwhelm when really there's this foundation of fun and simplicity and blood sugar balance and tuning into what works for you that could open up, I mean, just really simplify the whole picture. And just thinking about what happens when we kind of let go of expectations, like with the dates, it might feel like, okay, this is the right thing to do, when actually our nervous system feels so much better doing something that feels fun, taking our dog on a walk, dancing, and finding balance that way. And Jayton, I love that you have the memento mori in the background, because I think that's another one of these simple tools, nutrition aside. It's like, if you think about the preciousness of this moment, of this day, asking yourself how you want to spend that, how you want to feel, knowing that our time is limited, that can help simplify the picture. It's, you have these nutrition plans, you're implementing these new protocols, you maybe have a castor oil pack to do and you need to donate blood, and oh wait, you need to figure this out and your cycle is just about to start, so you need to load up on magnesium. And stepping back from even that for a second to say, okay, I know my brain is telling me this story about what I need to do and what I think is going to make me feel better, but whoa, how do I actually feel right now? And, the blood sugar example is so beautiful because, again, that simplifies so many of the other reactions in the body. When the blood sugar is balanced, those stress hormones are naturally going down. Our histamine levels aren't freaking out when we're eating certain foods. So it's almost like this self-mastery of figuring out what makes you feel stable and grounded and feeling the way you hope to feel when you're healthy or when the symptom is gone, and kind of working backwards of, wow, okay, this healing process is kind of out of control and takes some time sometimes. But if you click off your phone, put that away and remember, wow, spending time with my husband is actually going to bring me more joy and health and vitality than scrolling for the next pro metabolic hack. So yeah, I think just what's helped me most is always checking in with if I am moving through the day attached to my core values and attached to a core philosophy, and if it's serving people too, because I think a lot of people that might be listening to this podcast are maybe feeling overwhelmed and hopeless and kind of like, oh my gosh, I took birth control for 10 years and I've got this symptom and then stepping back and remembering, whoa, we're all in this together. Our bodies are very adaptable and strong. We can take the time we need to rebalance, and it works a lot better when we're enjoying the process. So putting on that Mariah Carey and dancing with your baby and taking the time to load up on, I don't know, I guess I'm always thinking of magnesium these days because of Morley. And actually, both of you, because of your work with menstrual awareness and cycle, so just all of the information that you provided, that's actually helped me a ton in terms of knowing how to listen to my body, because I spent almost 8 years I was told I had early onset ovarian failure and was infertile. That's what my doctors told me. But then just got my period back and kind of was thrown into this new body of like, whoa, like I'm feeling all sorts of ways. All these things are happening again, and learning to scale back and say, whoa, okay, how do I nourish myself now? Forgetting what I thought I used to be, forgetting who I thought I was. What are these helpful tools on Instagram that are so simple and actionable and don't require hiring even experts or buying anything expensive? It's more of this, okay, what are my energy levels telling me? What can I do nutritionally to really support my cells? So yeah, it all comes back to that blood sugar and knowing that this too shall pass and this life is short. So we better find ways to feel good now, forgetting the intensity of the social media world. So
That's really good advice, Theresa.
Thanks.
I can't remember the exact person who said this originally, but it was simplicity is the ultimate sophistication. So the more simple that you can make it, the more streamlined that you can get to the end goal is.
Oh, yeah.
What are some ways that, I mean, I feel like all of y'all are pretty driven and ambitious women. What are some of the ways that y'all try to tap into that flow state whenever y'all are really trying to get something done?
That's a good question. I can talk about it a little bit. Um, First, I clear my calendar to make sure. I find that doing work in blocks, like longer blocks, is more productive for me than um, doing tiny pieces of work here and there. It's called context switching. So when you're constantly switching context, going from one to the other to the other to the other, you're way less productive in the long term than if you had focused on one thing. I think that's why productivity experts recommend not multitasking. um, because you're constantly context switching, and so you'll probably do things okay but not one thing well. And so I personally like to block like at least an hour and a half to 2 hours if I know that I'm going to be working on something, to dedicate fully to one topic or one task so that I can get it done. And I make sure I'm fueled, so that's number one. If I don't have food in my stomach or in my system, forget it. It's not going to work out. So I always make sure that I enter this, I guess, block of work fueled, hydrated. I have good. I've had protein and carbohydrate. Maybe I have an adrenal cocktail with me, and the adrenal cocktails kind of. I'll just talk about it a little bit because sometimes I think most folks don't know what it is. It's a cocktail concocted by the root cause by the root cause protocol, and it's designed to replenish all the minerals and vitamins that we or the main minerals and vitamins that we lose when we're stressed. So it's 4 ounces of orange juice and a quarter teaspoon of salt and a quarter teaspoon of cream of tartar. So cream of tartar doesn't work for me personally. Just does not work for me. So I use mineral drops instead. Sometimes I add coconut water. Sometimes I'll add aloe vera juice because they're both pretty rich in potassium, and that's what the cream of tartar is for. The salt is for sodium, and then the orange juice is for vitamin C and also potassium. And I mean whole food vitamin C when I say vitamin C. So it's really just a cocktail of the minerals. So when we're stressed, we lose sodium and potassium pretty quickly. And our adrenal glands, which secrete stress hormones, that's where 95% of our vitamin C is stored. So we're burning through that pretty quickly when we're stressed as well. So it's a nice replenishing supportive drink to drink, here and there throughout the day when you feel like you need a pick me up. It can be relaxing for some, it can be energizing for others. It just depends on where you're at in your health journey. But for me, I like to sip on it to just keep myself fueled and my brain clear. And that's kind of what I have. If I feel like it, I'll diffuse something. I have a diffuser. I'm not an essential oils expert by any means. So I just like the one that smells like cinnamon. That's all I know. And yeah, I don't really listen to music, but while I'm working, it's just I have like a very compartmentalized, not compartmentalized, but if I get any distractions, it's hard for me to work. So it's very quiet.
Yeah,
Hopefully I don't. I was gonna say, hopefully I don't sound like a psychopath.
No, gosh, I miss being able to do stuff like that. I feel like if you're a listener to the podcast and you have kids and you're like, I do not have that break. My kids don't go to school anymore or whatever. To be honest, it's really hard. It is really hard in this current season where my son is only going to school on Thursdays and Fridays, but I have calls Monday through Friday. And my husband is a firefighter, so he's gone every 3 days. He's also in school and finishing his degree, so he's in college and paramedic school, so he's gone quite a bit. And I have around 36 clients, plus I run, a different part of my business. All the things that are behind the scenes. So to answer your question, like the focus part, my son being home 2 years old, it's not as easy as like putting on even video or just trying to give him a task. Hey, you got to do homework. It's really, really hard and chaotic. And it is the current season of my life. I am so grateful to have him. I'm so grateful for a hardworking husband. But financially, this is where we're at, where we're trying to balance everything. And there's not a lot of room for an opportunity for me to just sit and take a break for, like I would like to. And so what I really try to do is, I would say the same thing Loren did, absolutely food. I mean, like that's probably what Theresa will say too, and Jayton, like it is, the food is the first and foremost thing that I would focus on. And actually days where I know I'm going to be very, like I'm, I just put my son down for a nap, so I have 3 calls I can get in before he wakes up or something like that. I really focus on liquids that day. And although I'm not a fan of any kind of liquid diet or anything like that, it is very hard for me to get calories in. And because, like everyone is saying, blood sugar is so important to maintain the focus, to maintain the calm, to be able to think critically, to be able to, just calm. If you're taking in, a lot of what we do is we have clients that are really coming from just a desperate state. So if we're coming from to them in a desperate state, it's not good. So by fueling our body well, it allows us to kind of take a breath and also help them out. And so, Adrenal Cocktail, I love that. I do a lot of bone broth. I will sometimes, pair bone broth with like an apple, because that's a quicker thing to eat. I will do a lot of raw milk, and sometimes I'll just put honey and salt in there just to try to get a little bit more sugar and, the salt again for the adrenals. And so I'll wind up living by liquids a little bit more on the days that I'm busiest. And I try to ask for help and for somebody to watch my son. I try to, get a babysitter when we can have it. And the biggest thing, because I'm balancing so much activity in my home, anytime I do anything, I really try to get into a parasympathetic state, and I really try to breathe, because I am somebody that will quickly not breathe and do something. And it is my work is not effective at all. So I'll just take a couple deep breaths. I think it's called is it the square breathing, where you're breathing in for 4 seconds, holding it, and then breathing out for 4 seconds. I tend to do that a lot because it's allows me to have a goal, keep track of the goal, and kind of keep progress, which I know sounds weird, but I need something to kind of keep me focused on while I'm breathing. And that seems to work for me, is just taking a deep breath and then just doing the best that I can and having a lot of grace for myself. I know that one time I was talking to Loren, we were FaceTiming. I mean, she just saw how chaotic it was. Brady was screaming, "Mommy." I had 2 dogs jumping on me, and we were trying to talk about some things. And that's a lot of my everyday. So I try to laugh. I try to put boundaries aside. I try to have a play date with my son. So I'm not just, there got to be a time where he would try to close my laptop or take my phone away from me. And he's only 2. Like, that's how, it hurts me to talk about, makes me a little emotional, because he was so like, "Mommy, you put the phone away, put the computer away." But I was always trying to work on do both. And so now I try to do as much as I can. There are times where I have to be I have to put my kid in front of the screen. I have to be in front of my screen in front of him, but I always try to at least make a play date. And I stop at a certain time. I have a gentle alarm clock at between 5 and 5:30. That is gentle, and it says like, "Hey, you put work down," and then the rest of the time is family oriented. So I wish it's not as like, I wish it was a little bit more therapeutic, but it's just kind of like, hey, this in the midst of the crazy, this is the best that I can do. And this is what I do to try to mitigate the stress, keep my body from burning out, and get myself in a really good place to be able to help others.
Yep, you're a super mom, Meg.
Yeah.
Super mom.
While you both were talking, it was just making me think of, yes, setting aside time and really being focused on what you're doing and strengthening that muscle. Because I think if we are, setting aside time to create content, or we know we have a full day of calls, if our brain is bopping around and scattered, the flow state just naturally dissolves. So what's worked for me is almost kind of following that feeling of of feeling what feels inspiring and interesting and letting that guide the day. I mean, just clients alone are presenting such wild stories and, symptoms and thought loops and sharing so much that I feel like that naturally gets me in the flow state, which feels very inspiring. And then it will set off this loop of, oh, I can dive into this area of research now. And it it naturally opens up this space where I lose track of time and just getting really excited about what I'm reading. And then I think movement has also been really helpful for me, and I'm not talking like intense CrossFit kind of HIIT workouts. It's more like as if your brain drops into your cells and starting to notice what actually feels fun and relaxing. So I've noticed that when I stop thinking so much in words and I take myself out of the content kind of doing world for a bit and step back into, I guess, the aliveness of my body and see what feels good, that seems to naturally fuel more of that flow state for the more productive side of things. Which, again, I'm not a mom, and I know it's such a luxury for me and kind of a necessity for me as I learn my nervous system. I used to be a dog mom, and it just did not work for me. That kind of fried mentality where I couldn't find a moment to sit still completely blocked any creative or meaningful work for me. So as I come back to this simple way of doing things, and I love that reminder of just really tuning into following that flow state and seeing what it opens up, that's been the most natural way for me. Because I think if we force ourselves to sit down, force ourselves to sit down and, oh my gosh, I need to put a post out today and they're counting on me, it blocks the meat or the intention behind that. Why are we showing up on Instagram? Oh, we're doing this to help people feel better so they can help people feel better and the world will feel better. So I think naturally letting the inspiration kind of bubble up has been really helpful, and not trying to pin it down. Like if I'm really not able to focus, then I start to really check back in. Okay, have I actually fed myself enough? Where is my blood sugar? Oh, wow, I really didn't sleep. Okay, maybe it would feel good to roll around on the floor and do some trigger pointing and break up, some of those tight muscles and see if some of those thought patterns will naturally kind of come back. Because again, I think the body's always trying to reorganize and kind of self-correct. So that flow state is always there. We're just covering it up with our stress and our to-dos and our dates and our posts and, responding to the trolls as well. And if we step back, I think that there is this sense of peacefulness underneath it all. So yeah, finding the time and having the luxury to engage with that. And I think, even thinking of your child, your dogs, you're about to be a mom. I don't know about you, Jayton. Maybe you're thinking about, okay, maybe not. But we have all these ideas.
He's a plant dad. I see that.
Yeah.
Couple plant kids.
Yeah. I mean, just like honoring what our limitations are and not even really seeing them as limitations, more like what is life presenting us with? Great. How can we creatively allow that kind of non-thinking, more fluid space to fill up parts of our day and let that naturally balance out? Because I think with that idea of being in a flow state, like it feels so good. The brain naturally wants to be there. And sometimes life says, okay, no, you got to take care of this. You got to handle this and, take care of the really real tasks and get things done and show up in a productive way. And when those flow states do happen to come up, just really savoring them and diving in and letting that kind of guide your day without pushing towards them or forcing them. So yeah, that's my protocol for flow.
Yeah, I like those. Stephen Kotler actually studies the art of flow and kind of how to get into a flow state, how to gain momentum with more effectively getting into the flow state and sustaining it for longer periods of time. So I highly recommend looking into some of his work if you're interested in that. So I want to be respectful of everyone's time. We've been on here for a minute now. So if we could go around one more time, and if y'all can give them y'all's website, social media platforms, stuff like that, as well as the number one tip that you can think of off the top of your head to most effectively heal your metabolism.
Ooh, okay. Yeah. So Meg _Langston is where you can find me on Instagram. And I have my website, meglangston.com. Not that creative or very creative and just just thinking of my name. Anyway, and I have, if you're interested in my work, I have a rebalance course, which is really just a foundational course to metabolic health and how to pursue it. I talk about body image and things in there as well, because that's where my heart is. I do one-on-ones, but I'm really probably booked up until like April right now. So this is, I could go into a lot about blood sugar and eating nourishing foods that are easy to digest, but something that I think that is a little different. I'm sure you can go on all of our websites and our Instagrams and get all those food tips. But I would say one thing that I think is going to be helpful, that is not necessarily pro-metabolic, but pro-health, is finding time to serve other people. And, as a mom, that can feel exhausting, but I think when we take a step outside of our own, just like, I need a self-focus. I'm not good enough. I'm not, just running in that circle. I think if we can either give our finances or, give our time, if it's not people, it's animals or a cause you love, it just allows us to take a deep, step back and realize, like, as Theresa said, like, our life is not just about our healing state. And there's a lot more going on beyond what's just in our constant consumption of information. And yeah, I think that if you want more nutritional stuff, obviously check out any of our profiles. But for me, that's one thing that I really think could be, if you feel stuck, I would try to serve someone else and see how that helps move things along.
I think that's beautiful, Meg.
Yeah.
I just wanted to say, you guys are also so special, and I'm so very grateful to talk to you guys. And I just wanted to end on that I just love every single one of you guys, and I'm so grateful for you allowing us to do this, Jayton. Go for it, Loren. Sorry.
Ditto, Meg. I feel the same way. Thanks so much. Really appreciate all of you, and thank you, Jayton. This is Loren Delacruz. You can find me at Innate Functional Nutrition on Instagram. And innate is spelled I-N as in Nancy, N as in Nancy, A-T-E, just in case. And then my website's innate-nutrition.com. I'm coming out with a preconception course. Hopefully it will be in April. That's more realistically what it's looking like. Luckily, I'm working on this with a business partner of mine, also a dear friend. Her name is Dr. Brittany Harmon, and she's the .preconception.pt on Instagram, and she's a pelvic floor health specialist. So this course is designed to really target the nutrition side, but also the physical side and how you can prepare holistically for pregnancy. It's going to be really fun. Super excited, but luckily, she's also very fluid in a sense, and is okay with pushing back timelines as well, because we both have our work cut out for us. But yes, very excited to bring this resource to everyone. And I do work with one-on-one clients. I'm not taking any new ones right now, but in April, likely when I launch the course, I'll be able to. And one tip that everyone can take away to heal their metabolism or improve their metabolism, I would say, I'm going to say two things. I am a huge fan of adrenal cocktails. So just giving your cells the fuel that they need to really optimally work is going to be huge. And just as a reminder, minerals run enzymes, which run hormones. So if you have a hormonal imbalance, which is likely, showing up on tests, or you feel like your hormones are off, if your metabolism is off, likely there is a hormonal imbalance, but you have to look a little bit deeper before addressing the hormonal imbalance, because there's likely a mineral imbalance going on underneath that. So if you want to really address the metabolic dysfunction, you have to take a look at the minerals that are involved in running everything. So mineral repletion is huge for me. It works really well for all of my clients. And just prioritizing minerals, getting more salt and potassium, magnesium when you're ready, because that has to be taken, with care, just will really help. But also a non-nutrition kind of thing. I think a really big blocker to healing the metabolism. And when I talk about metabolism, it's not aesthetic related. It's literally how your body functions, how your cells are functioning. So when we're looking at metabolic function on a cellular level, we really also need to confront any sort of trauma or stressors that have taken place, because those can be huge blockers to healing. And we can do all the nutrition stuff that we want. We can do all the lifestyle stuff that we want. But if we don't actually address the traumas that have happened and that, maybe are still sticking around, or the emotional stress that, is maybe going on, we might be stuck where we are for a long time. We may, see improvements with nutrition and lifestyle, but if we don't address the real deep issues and confront those things, we may be stuck. So that's also, if you're someone that's been working on your metabolism for a while, your healing journey, don't underestimate the power of, addressing and confronting any kind of like hidden trauma that you might have.
That's the perfect segue into what I do, not who I am, but I'm at Living Roots Wellness on Instagram and also livingrootswellness.com. If you want some really long blog posts, that's where I started, but shifted more towards the smaller chunks on Instagram. But yeah, I mostly focus on, like Loren was saying, helping release the stress and trauma, little T, big T traumas that build up over the course of a life. And I found huge benefit myself from Eft tapping. I'm not sure if any of you have used that, but it's similar to EMDR, but I find it to be so much more effective. And the cool thing about it is that you almost get an instantaneous shift towards that relaxation response, which, thinking about a pro-metabolic approach and a pro-metabolic mindset, we're doing this to lower stress and increase function. And if we can do that with thoughts alone, oh my gosh, the minerals we're taking in, the things we're doing to feel better work so much better when we don't have these stories and triggers and thought loops that are very counterproductive. So my 2 tips: honoring the gut. I have to honor the gut. I would say the carrots have been game changing for me. And I see this time and time again, of course, paying attention to the beta carotene, but I guess the non-fermenting fibers, in terms of improving the gut motility, that frees up so much freedom for the liver to get back to functioning. And then our hormones can start rebalancing. And it's this beautiful cycle that when the gut's happy, the liver starts functioning more effectively, our thyroid hormone can start converting, everything starts rebalancing. We start to feel better. And even just cases of brain fog and more of the mental health imbalances that happen when a body is starting to show signs of dysfunction and showing signs of imbalance, that can start to clear up so quickly. So bringing it back to the simple steps to really help the metabolism, definitely starting with finding ways that start to stabilize the system that are so simple that even your brain's like, wait a second, that's too simple. It can't be that simple. And then, of course, that right there is starting to honor that stress and trauma really change the way our bodies work. And if we can get that as this more stable part of us, and like almost as this foundation where we trust ourselves and have that sense of peacefulness and ability to be happy right now, no matter what our bodies are doing, I think that just simplifies the whole equation. And then the more you dive into all the nuance of the minerals and supporting the body, it's like the body's like ripe to accept it when the brain's like, yeah, I can do this. This is going to work. And yeah, so I'd say carrots and mindset, and being gentle too, because finding ways to like yourself while you're healing. And I know that might even sound pretty cliche, but there's this whole idea in the wellness world that you have to like really struggle and push and force and restrict and feel miserable in order to heal. And I think that paradigm is so, I'm not sure where it started, but I see time and time again that when people start enjoying themselves and naturally releasing stress just because they're finding that beautiful joy that's inherent in the moment, everything works better. So, yeah.
Definitely. Well, I'm very grateful for all y'all hopping on here. I really do appreciate everyone's time. And everyone that is listening to this, make sure to give them all a follow. I personally follow all of them, and I love all of y'all's stuff. So I'm looking forward for everybody to be able to listen to this episode. So thank y'all.
Thanks so much, Jayton.
Thanks for listening to the podcast. If you haven't already, make sure to hit the like button, subscribe, and leave a comment down below if you want us to cover a different topic.